Ikemoto actually revealed Mamushi's secret ability, which explains why he can see Eida when she was looking at him using the Sharingan. And it also explains how he is going to find Eida in these coming chapters. Let's jump in. First of all, didn't you find it a little weird why Mamushi kept mentioning gathering around a huge crowd of people? And why he mentioned the amount of people that were looking at him? I found that to be quite weird too, but when I read the chapter multiple times, it started to make a lot more sense. Mamushi tells his clones to expose themselves to a lot of onlookers and grab the attention of as many of them as they can. Why is that the case? As we already know that the Mamushi clones had the option of killing one of the bystanders, a random Konoha citizen, but they didn't want to do that. So killing them isn't the option that Mamushi wants, as all he truly is focused on is finding where Eida is at. He's not even really worried about Boruto and Kawaki. He sees that all of his clones are just distracting them while he goes around and tries to look for Eida. But what Mamushi does next answers all of the questions and reveals his ability. He goes on top of the building and multiplies just a little bit more, and then he says that 70 people are watching him, and none of them are Eida. This is over a large area of people. So it's not like he literally went and individually counted up the amount of people that were looking at him and said 70. 70 would be a little bit too many people to be able to calculate so fast. So what if he didn't actually count them? What if Mamushi has the ability to sense everyone that is looking at him? This would explain how he was able to tell that Eida was looking at him, even though she was using her Sharingan. And it also explains how he can tell just how many people are looking at him and the fact that none of them are Eida. And we also get a revelation from Eida in the past that she only looks in the past to not have Mamushi gaze back at her. So it's not like it was just a one-time thing. It is something that Mamushi is constantly able to do. This also ends up revealing how Eida is going to get tricked into revealing her location. And I know what people are thinking. Obviously he could tell that 70 people were looking at him since he probably saw them looking. This is fair, but I feel like Ikemoto is really foreshadowing Mamushi's ability with his language. It is too pinpoint. Mamushi stressed that they needed to get as many people's attention as possible. Why would he want that? If he is trying to secretly go and find Eida's location, and he has turned off his chakra signal for that same reason. If he wanted to go around and fight various characters, then he would have simply not turned off his chakra. However, with this theory, everything is solved, and it would explain so many of the questions that we simply don't have answers for. And I don't think he can read their minds because he wouldn't have asked them where Eida was. However, he can tell when and who is looking at him at any given moment. I believe that probably at the end of the next chapter, or in the chapters to come, Eida will end up using her Sharingan to find out exactly what is going on. Things right now are about to get tricky, because we have Shikamaru who is going to be interrogated, and soon they might have to use Eida's eyes as other eyes for what exactly is going on in the battlefield to aid in defense and strategy. Shikamaru not being able to see Inogen's ability as he was able to do in the past, Eida may now serve as the eyes for Shikamaru and allow Shikamaru to plan his next move. Or it could simply be due to curiosity. Since they have just been notified by Shikamaru and the police that Mamushi is here, she will try and use that ability to see what is going on, see who is the closest clone that is around her, which will lead to Mamushi finding out where exactly Eida is, and that is where everything will go wrong. And think about it, this ability is so low-key that Kashinkoji, seeing the future, might not know that Mamushi even used this ability at all. So I believe it is quite unlikely that Kashinkoji even picked up on this ability, thus he never mentioned it to Eida, which means that this is a future that is unpreventable due to the nature of Mamushi's ability. But let's say Mamushi ends up finding Eida's location in the coming chapter. What happens next? How does he defeat Damon, and how does he stalk Kawaki and Boruto? This is where I believe a few tactics are going to be employed. and it explains why Mamushi is the best person to be fighting alone in this battle. I believe that the first thing he will deal with is stalling Kawaki and Boruto. Mamushi will employ a group of decoys, whose job is to constantly multiply, creating almost a shield and a barrier to the location that Mamushi actually is. The other group will be the one who is tasked to go and find Eida and devour her. However, someone like Sarada, who possesses one of the most broken abilities yet, being with her orbs, she can't stay in this battle, as she is low-key the best person to fight Mamushi. So this is where I believe that Hidari will make an appearance, either to fight her in the village or take her to another dimension where we will end up seeing Sarada and Hidari fight. This perfectly correlates with everything that we saw take place in the future scenes that Kashinkoji saw. Now, when it comes to Mamushi versus Damien, there are two ways that I feel like this fight will happen in a way that favors Mamushi, and one way that will take place in a way that favors Damien. Speaking of Mamushi's first win con, the first one is simply Damien's abilities relying on intent to kill and reflect somebody's ability. The more dumb Mamushi gets, the less this battle will end up working in Damien's favor. And fighting somebody like Damien, I believe that Mamushi will multiply to the highest level possible. So him becoming dumber and dumber will lead to him basically having no intent, fighting using instinct, not any sort of coherent thought. This would basically mean alter instincts, but in the form that you are not thinking about your actions are just being made. Like breathing right now, you are breathing automatically. I think that saying that just forces you to breathe manually, but when you breathe, it doesn't come from intent, it comes from instinct. This would then nullify Damien's reflection ability, meaning that he would have to fight them one by one. The second win con for Mamushi is that if the instinctual method is not viable, Damien could have an issue when it comes to dealing with multiple people using their abilities. As maybe one potential weakness for Damien is the fact that he can only reflect one ability from one source. So if multiple different clones attack Damien at once, then he might not be able to reflect all of the clone's abilities, which means that he has to reflect them one by one, and he's basically going to be jumped by 20 plus clones at once. This is not to say that I believe that Damien will lose to the clones. I don't think so personally. However, what I believe is likely to take place is that it will buy time for Mamushi and a couple of other clones to go and devour Eida. And to be 100%, I really want to see this take place. The Senjus definitely need to take a W this arc, and if Mamushi wins, I will be 100% happy. However, a win con for Damien would be that since there are so many different clones that are going around, Damien would only have to hop on their backs or touch one of them with his pawns, which would allow Damien to reflect all of their abilities regardless of intent. Just like Damien reflected Kawaki's attack in the fight outside the village. At that moment, Kawaki's intent was not to kill Damien, it was for Code. He wanted to kill Code with his final attack. But due to the fact that he was touching Code, his powers allowed him to reflect that ability. So he could do the same thing with Mamushi, making it faster for him to defeat all of the clones before Eida ends up getting devoured. However, I hope the future where Eida gets devoured comes to pass. I don't want to see Himawari end up being taken out. I would rather just see Eida go. The question will now be, what happens when somebody gets devoured? Will their powers be transferred to the Senju? Will they evolve into a completely different creature or being? And I need to see some of these questions being answered. And by having the Senju win in this arc, we will have so many answers to the questions that we have at the moment. But omnipotence being transferred to the Senju is something that would ultimately lead towards the worst future, as we have to remember that there are Otsutsuki influenced by Shibai's DNA through Code's claw marks, Ishiki's DNA through Code's karma, and there are also the Tentals, the Divine Tree, which is Otsutsuki material. We already see that they have similar abilities to the Otsutsukis, as they can fly and they can hide their chakra signal. So either they are a lot Otsutsuki or they are just part Otsutsuki. But if they obtain this power, there is a high likelihood that they may be able to use omnipotence at a higher degree, and them having the Sharingan too, I think it would definitely be too overpowered for a Shinji to have, and can definitely make it a lot understandable why the worst future could really take place after Eida is devoured. To the scale that any other future where the world is just simply destroyed and an adventure is created would not be that bad, but having the Shinji obtain omnipotence would be something out of the norm, and something that definitely fits the criteria of the worst future. But to find out just how Mamushi vs Damon can truly go, you have to watch this video right here for an in-depth analysis of all of their abilities.